Have you ever wondered what happened to the disciples after the resurrection? Those men who walked with Jesus, saw miracles, and then saw him resurrected. What changed in their lives? Today, I'm going to tell you this incredible story based on the Holy Bible. Stay with me until the end, because what happened to them has everything to do with your life too. Let's discover it together. Picture this. It was night. The doors were locked, the lights dimmed, and the smell of wood and oil lamps filled the air. The disciples had gathered there, heads bowed, hearts heavy, eyes still swollen from so much weeping. Fear was almost tangible. The silence was only broken by the rapid beating of their own hearts. They had seen Jesus die, and now what was left? Then, in the midst of that anguish, without warning, without opening the door, Jesus appeared among them. Yes, right there in the middle of the room. Their eyes widened, breath caught, and courage hid away. But he, with the softest and firmest voice imaginable, said, "Peace be with you." John 20:19. Can you feel that? That moment when fear mixes with hope and disbelief surrenders to the presence of the Master. But there was one who wasn't there, Thomas. And when the others told him what they had seen, he replied with the pain of someone who wanted to believe but couldn't. "Unless I see the nail marks and put my finger where the nails were, I will not believe." John 20:25. 8 days later, Jesus appeared again, and he went straight to him. "Thomas, come here. Put your finger here." Imagine Thomas's tears, his chest full of emotion. In that moment, all he could say was, "My Lord and my God." And it doesn't end there. One morning by the Sea of Tiberias, the disciples were fishing. The net was empty, their bodies weary, and they longed for the voice that used to call them. Then, from the shore, someone shouted, "Throw the net on the right side." They threw it, and the net was so full of fish it almost broke. Peter, ever impulsive, recognized, "It's the Lord." John 21:7. And before anyone could say a word, he jumped into the water, swimming toward Jesus. Can you imagine the sound of the waves, the quickened breath, the tears mixing with the salty water? It was real. The Lord was there. These appearances of the resurrected Jesus didn't just reignite their faith. They sparked the fire that would prepare them to change the world. And I ask you, if you were in that room or on that boat, what would you do when you saw him? The days that followed were filled with expectation. The disciples now knew Jesus had resurrected. But what came next? On a clear morning, while they were walking down a dusty road, Jesus gathered them together and, with that gaze that pierced the soul, said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation." Mark 16:15. Imagine hearing this from the mouth of the one who conquered death. Their hearts must have been beating so fast it almost escaped their chests. But he didn't stop there. Jesus promised something that would change everything. "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses." Acts 1:8. It was the promise that they wouldn't be alone. The courage they lacked would come from above. And then, before their eyes, the sky opened. Golden clouds filled the horizon, and Jesus began to ascend. His robes swayed in the wind. Their tearful eyes tried to follow him until a cloud hid him from their sight. Acts 1:9-11. An angel appeared and said, "Why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven." Imagine the mix of emotion and emptiness in that moment. They no longer had Jesus physically there, but they carried the promise. And look, if you were there, you'd feel that electric air in the atmosphere, the sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. And indeed, it was. Because what would come next would change the course of human history. 50 days had passed since that morning when the tomb was empty. Jerusalem was crowded. People from all corners, different languages, voices echoing through the narrow streets. And there they were, the disciples, gathered in one place. The atmosphere was filled with prayer and expectation. Hands raised, voices whispering ancient psalms and hymns. the smell of oil and wood mixed with the sound of their beating hearts. Suddenly, a wind came from heaven. It wasn't just any wind. It was like the sound of a mighty rushing wind that filled the entire house, Acts 2:2. And something like tongues of fire rested on each of them. You know that moment when you just know God is present? When your skin tingles and tears fall uncontrollably. That's what happened. They began to speak in other languages, proclaiming the greatness of God, and the people outside stopped, amazed, saying, "How are they speaking our languages?" Peter, the very same one who had denied Jesus, now stood up, his eyes aflame with courage, his voice firm and powerful, and he preached like never before. He proclaimed that Jesus, the resurrected one, was the promised Messiah. And that day, about 3,000 people surrendered to the gospel, Acts 2:41. 3,000 transformed lives. The early church was born there in the midst of fire, courage, and the living presence of the Holy Spirit. And I ask you, have you ever imagined being part of that? The city that once cheered now turned in hatred. The disciples who had once hidden now walked through the streets with boldness. Peter and John were arrested for healing a lame man and proclaiming that Jesus had risen, Acts 4:3. Picture this, the two of them handcuffed, dragged before the religious leaders. But do you know what was remarkable? The courage in their eyes. How did these simple men, with no formal education, speak with such authority? Because they were filled with the Holy Spirit. Meanwhile, Stephen, full of grace and power, was performing signs and wonders. But envy grew. They took him before the Sanhedrin, and in his final speech, Stephen spoke with such passion about the gospel of Jesus Christ that the crowd was enraged. And when the stones began to fly, he looked to the heavens and said, "I see heaven open, and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." Acts 7:56. A martyr, a hero of the faith. By the way, if this story has touched your heart so far, take a quick pause, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. It helps me understand that you enjoy this type of content and motivates me to keep bringing you vivid Bible stories like this one. Now, back to the scene. The disciples knew following Christ had a price, but to them, it was worth every tear, every scar, because heaven awaited them. As the years passed, the marks on the bodies and souls of the disciples told stories that books could not contain. Peter, the impulsive fisherman, was imprisoned in Rome. When the day of his execution came, he made one last request: "Crucify me upside down, for I am not worthy to die as my Lord did." And so it was done. His calloused hands preached the gospel until his final breath. James, the brother of John, was the first to shed his blood. Beheaded by Herod's command, Acts 12:2. John, the beloved disciple, survived an execution attempt and was exiled to the island of Patmos, where he wrote Revelation. Each one had a different end, but they all carried the same certainty. Jesus had risen. No torture, no threat could silence their testimony. And I ask you, what would make ordinary men give their lives so radically, if not the unwavering certainty that Christ was alive? They were eyewitnesses. They saw, touched, and walked with the resurrected Jesus. And they chose to lose everything here to gain everything in heaven. And you, what answer have you given to this call? These men who witnessed the death and resurrection of Jesus faced everything for him. They were persecuted, rejected, and even killed, but they never denied their faith. And the big question is, what made these men give their lives? It wasn't just a teaching, a miracle, or an idea. It was the certainty that Jesus was alive and that he had a purpose for their lives. They understood that the mission didn't end at the cross. The resurrection was the beginning of something much greater, and today he calls you too. If these men were able to give everything for him, what are you willing to give? Is what you live today in tune with Jesus' call for your life? He wants to use you the same way, empowering you and giving you courage, just as he did for them. So I invite you, respond to the call of Christ. Today, he offers you a life of purpose, transformation, and eternity with him. What will you do with this? If this video touched your heart, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs this message, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next videos. May the peace of Christ be with you.